Donna, traverse right, Leman Russes, enemy markings, Commander Agath ordered. 665-1137 Stagler slammed on his traverse controls, jolting the turret to the right. The enemy vehicle was hard to miss. The deep maroon of its previous planetary militia colors had been largely stripped, replaced by an eye-bleedingly garish gradient of blues and purples. Its unit markings had been struck, replaced by symbols that made Stagler's eyes itch. He centered the cannon's targeting reticle squarely against the gaudy vehicle's side plate, and jammed his heel into the firing pedal. It exploded in a burst of pink flame, gaudy shrapnel, and oddly glittery smoke.
Engine kill
Flashed in the corner of Stagler's screen, adding another low-resolution skull icon to the vehicle's growing tally. The Fist of Faragrad was older than Stagler, older than most of the 179th, a vehicle that had belonged to some other regiment under some other colonel used in some other war. Stagler had heard the crews of the squadron's other vehicles claim the old Ragnarok had even seen fighting on Vrax. He found that hard to believe. If it truly was that old, then most of its parts had likely been replaced since. Much like its crew. From his gunner's seat, Stagler had seen most of the crew replaced. The drivers had it worst. Sat in a cupola that protruded from the hull's front. The turret wasn't much safer, largely due to its size, but at least Stagler didn't have to rely on anyone else to shoot the threat before it shot at him. "Fucking hell, shellhole!" the driver shouted, a recent replacement whose name Stagler hadn't had the chance to memorize yet. On cue, Stagler felt the whole vehicle tip, the front dropping sharply forward. The hull slammed into the dirt with an impact strong enough to make Stagler's targeting screen go fuzzy with interference. There was a moment, as the fist dipped below the crater's edge, where the world went silent. The static din of driven rain, the pinging hail of ricochet autogun rounds, the whining hiss of deflected las bolts, all dropped away for a single, quiet moment. Then the engines pushed harder, digging the vehicle's spiked treads deeper into the muddy walls, clawing its way over the crater's lip. And it all began again. Hello everybody, welcome to Gone Hollow Minis. My name is Colt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let everybody know that this is episode 3 in my Lions of Gorgoth narrative series. This is the series of vignettes and short stories that I'm using to flesh out the lore of some of my own Astra Militarum Krieg army models. And maybe a couple of my other armies, if you're paying attention. If you want to check out those other 2 stories, they're on a playlist on my channel, so feel free to go ahead and check them out if you're interested. They're not crucial to understand this story, these are mostly just small vignettes, but if that's the kind of thing you're into, feel free to check it out. For this video, I will be kitbashing a Ragnarok heavy tank in the background. This is done out of a 1/48th scale KV2 kit. I know this has been a pretty popular conversion in my community so far, so have no fear, a full walkthrough, breakdown, and guide to how to kitbash this for yourself will be coming up next week. I'll still put up some information on the screen so you kind of know what's going on, but the full breakdown will be in that video. But with that all out of the way, I will go ahead and let you all get back to the story. Stagler found his rhythm, adding the steady, bone-shaking blast of the battle cannon to the cacophony around him. The enemy wasn't rabble anymore. The cultists they had flushed from their trenches some months back had been disorganized, unfocused, wearing the trappings of factorium workers and hive laborers. Now, scant miles from Gorgoth's walls, they were finally fighting soldiers. Their uniforms had been modified, granted. Their flak armor had been sanded smooth, maroon unit markings replaced with a glossy black lacquer. Their fatigues were dyed a lurid magenta, often missing sleeves or omitted altogether, with bare skin peeking from beneath flak vests. They fought from prepared positions, ferrocrete bunkers, and earthwork pillboxes. They used grenades, weapons installations, all dotted irregularly throughout the muddy mire of no man's land. The further they drove, the worse it became. The tanks, Leman Russes mostly, with a smattering of Dorns and 1 or 2 Ragnaroks, waded stoically through it. The infantry fared worse. Ricochets and stray rounds found corpsmen covering behind the armored vehicles. The first company's few sentinels made common targets, their thinner armor pierced easily by hunter-killers or well-placed plasma blasts. But the Fist of Faragrad ground on, trampling whatever barricades had not been crushed by the front ranks of Leman Russes. The Krieg were not predisposed to pride, but the enemy's desperation to halt them, and their failure to do so, did pluck an uncharacteristic confidence in 665-1137 Stagler. Too late, Stagler remembered what the Ministorum's morning sermon had said about pride preceding a fall. A hissing, slithering shriek cut through the staccato orchestra of gunfire and detonation. It built higher, louder, raising in pitch, stinging Stagler's eardrums until a wave of pressure hit the fist, sending sparks throughout the tank's electronic systems. Stagler clamped his hands to his ears, working his jaw to even out the pressure. He couldn't hear, could barely see through squinted eyes. He braced a hand against the inside of the turret, sucking breath through gritted teeth. Stagler! Stagler! Stagler, Throne, damn it, get back on the gun! Commander Agath's voice broke through the ringing. What the fragging hell was that? The driver shouted, louder than he had intended to. Next to him, the starboard turret gunner lolled his head numbly, red trickling from between the fingers he had clamped to his ears. It doesn't matter, Corpsman, keep us driving! They had all felt it then. All heard it. Stagler took a breath, straightened himself in his seat, and turned back to his targeting screen. One of the Leman Russes had stopped moving. There were no flames, no explosions, it had just simply stopped. As the driver pulled the fist past the wreckage, the damage became obvious. The tank's right flank had cavitated. As if a titanic fist had simply battered the vehicle's side, no need for penetration or explosives. No carbon scoring, no charring. Even still, the tank wasn't moving. If the blast had left Stagler's ears ringing from so far away, he could only assume what had become of the Russ's crew. Yanking on his traverse controls, Stagler swung the gun around, following the direction of the Russ that had been hit. He scanned over the horizon, over the crenellations of enemy pillboxes and weapon nests, none big enough to hold a weapon that could kill a tank so easily. He turned, opening his mouth to report when the same slithering, whining hiss cut him off. Ears! Agath shouted, covering her own. Cover your ears! Stagler obeyed, but this time he watched. Watched as the air in front of the tank rippled and sheared as if it had been cut, a pale ghost green glow arcing towards the fist of Faragrad, colliding into the dirt meters away from the Ragnarok's hull, with the same brain-piercing crack. Even with his ears covered, the ringing took precious seconds to subside. But this time, he had seen where the blast had come from. Still deafened, Stagler retraced the sonic blast's arc with the barrel of the fist's battle cannon. There, off of the armored column's right flank, a bunker, big enough to house an anti-tank weapon, whatever kind it was. Got it, Commander! 47 degrees! He stamped on the firing pedal, watched as the shot arced high and readjusted. Driver, change course! If there's any tank in this regiment built to break bunkers, it's us, ahead full! The fist angled out of position with the rest of the column, cutting obliquely across the empty land between the armor and the infantry. Again, Stagler sent battle cannon rounds at the bunker, shots flying wide with the vehicles jostling. The cannon, too, returned fire, sending more deafening shots into the dirt around the fist. One came close enough to blast the spare track links and tow cables off of the vehicle's hull. Aim, Stagler, by the throne! Agath gripped the periscope tighter, leather gloves creaking on the metal casing. Stagler could see it now. Barely, but it was there. He had expected a barrel of some sort. Instead, he found the face of some contorted, statuary creature. Perfectly spherical eyes bore into his own, set above a distended mouth wrapped around the exaggerated veins of a speaker grill. The whole thing was gilt, tracery of silver visible from even this great distance. He brought the reticle to rest in the dead center of that speaker grill. If they could just get a little bit closer. The air between them shimmered, quivered, tightened as the hissing wail rose. He fired. The fist of Faragrad roared as the sonic cannon shrieked, sending the shell through the acoustic wave. The shell struck first, through the cannon's barrel, detonating moments after. A shout rose to Stagler's lips as the cannon's last shot impacted the fist of Faragrad's hull, shaking him from his seat, cracking his head on the turret's wall as he fell. Ears ringing, head stinging, 665-1137 Stagler let out a pained moan, and the world went black around him. It was dark when he woke. Dark and quiet. The tank was dead, engine off, its crew still. As he blinked the vision back to his eyes, memories of dreams touched at his mind. Dreams of silks and cushions, of warmth and touch, of nauseating sweetness, of razored scales and piercing hooks. His head erupted with remembered pain, and Stagler forced ragged breaths through his rebreather unit. Bad dreams? Agath's voice was weak, forced through tired lips. Stagler looked up and narrowed his eyes, just barely making out the commander from the gloom. She was still in her seat, slumped against the turret's wall, arm thrown haphazardly over an ammo rack. The rest of the crew were similarly slumped, but unmoving. How long's it been? Agath shrugged. I can't tell. I didn't want to risk turning the screens back on. I've looked outside, though, and... She trailed off, chin lowering to her chest. The regiment's either pushed on or fallen back. I can't tell which. Stagler shook his head. We were never going to reach the walls. Command knew that. Which means they've pulled back, Agath agreed. And we're on our own. They'll come back for the fist. Stagler pulled himself up, stretching his crick to back as well as he could inside the tank. We'll hold out. Quiet. Agatha straightened in her seat. Sir, Stagler argued, hoisting another battle cannon shell from its rack near the slumped-over loader. They wouldn't leave a vehicle like this behind, salvaged or otherwise. The commander prodded him with a boot. I hear engines. Stagler stopped. She was right. Through the quiet rumbled the low, grumbling noise of a war machine's engine, only more. Maybe it was the quiet, maybe it was the low ringing that still stung Stagler's ears, but the noise seemed less like a mechanism and more like an orchestra. The low rumble was there, of course, but with it was mixed a higher, warbling tone like a brass instrument. It rose and fell in rhythm, conducted by an unseen composer. The sound brought more teasing memories of recently forgotten dreams to Stagler's mind, without the sweetness, without the warmth. Only the claws, only the tearing hooks, only the slithering laughter. Agatha was in agreement. Load that shell, but keep it quiet. We only fire if we have an opportunity. Otherwise, we stay dead, understood? Yes, sir. Stagler hefted the shell, ramming it into the breach as quietly as he could manage. Agatha pressed herself into the cupola, peering into the vision slits in the absence of a periscope. Him on Terra, she swore, relaxing back into her seat. That's a rhino. Stagler froze. Are you sure? Her only reply was a shallow nod. Where are they going? Can you see? I can see, she granted, turning in her seat to follow the trundling vehicle. The damn thing's bright bloody purple. They're heading back for that bunker. Magnificent. That's what it had been. Perhaps not his magnum opus, but still, the organ had been a thing of beauty. Helvetain had given it to the mortals out of benevolence, simple, trusting benevolence. And instead of placing it where it deserved to be placed, somewhere far above the mud and blood of battle, somewhere where its song could reach more than just more mortals, they had used it as just another weapon. An effective one, Helvetain had made sure of that, but it was so much more. The fools have already been sent to answer to the Dark Prince, Kishal assured him, inferring his choirmaster's thoughts. They don't take kindly to squandered gifts, Helvetain grumbled, a discordant thing automatically modulated by the shrieker at his throat. Even still, what wasted work? What wasted time? The mortals make a mockery of this canvas. He waved a hand at the rhino's vision slit, at the pockmarked no-man's land and the smoldering carnage it held. Liberation takes time for the corpse god's whelps. So it does. At least they have us. The rhino ground to a halt, its assault ramp sending a shower of waterlogged mud into the air as it fell. The poorly dugout that the mortals had built for his creation was mostly still standing. That made the destruction of his instrument all the more insulting. The cacophonist walked through the rubble, plucking pieces of carbon-scored brass from beneath chunks of ferrocrete. Traces of the finery remained, but tarnished by dirt and soot. He had modeled it off of the blastmasters used by his choir, the choir of the agastopic hymn, but on a much grander scale. Racks of organ pipes, warp amplifiers created after the doom siren that sat upon his own back. It was a thing of beauty. Had been a thing of beauty. The explosion had scattered and half-melted the pipes, some embedding themselves into the bunker's rear wall. The amplifiers had taken the worst of the damage, pierced by the shell as well as the detonation. It couldn't be salvaged. It would need to be rebuilt. Helvetain growled and turned from the dugout. My lord. Kishal pointed towards the mudland. Movement. The wreck of a tank, an ugly, slab-sided thing with a turret as tall as its hull, angled a stout barrel towards the bunker. Its front glacis showed the mark of his organ, a telltale impact that had rent the metal and blasted the tracks away. Evidently, enough of the mortal crew survived. Helvetain admired their determination, if only it could be turned to a more reciprocating deity. He laughed as its battle cannon fired. It exploded behind him, inside the bunker, with enough force to send him to a knee, mud clotting in the nooks of his warplate's filigree. Another smirch on his creation. Another bruise to his legion's colors. Reach Lord Carolon, the cacophonist hummed. The stage is set. This world awaits our aid. Now come the saccharine saints, the scions of the Third, the sons of Fulgrim and the Emperor. We bring liberation from this doldrum,
So come to us and be freed.
I hope you all enjoyed this third episode in the Lions of Gorgoth narrative series. If you like how this kitbash turned out, I just want to remind everyone that there will be a full walkthrough on how to do this next week, with the full narration and whole 9 yards, so if you want to do this for yourself, keep an eye out for that video. However, if you did enjoy this video, why not drop a like? Both YouTube's Machine Spirits and I really appreciate it. Drop a comment to let me know what you think, and if you have any suggestions. Subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss an episode, and of course, until we meet again, friends, be safe, be kind, and don't you dare go hollow.